Hi folks, welcome back to the Tabletop's Edge and our last Blitzkrieg campaign playthrough. Today, the 20th of December turn continues on. We have 24 formations in total remaining to do, which puts us probably just about halfway through the turn. However, many of those formations, maybe even most of those formations, are going to not involve any combat or offensive action. They will consist largely of either marching or some repositioning. So I think we can hopefully get this turn wrapped up in today's episode and maybe one more after this. Now, when we left off with the 3rd Fallschirmjäger Division trying to clean up some of the remaining pockets of 106th Infantry Division around the Saint-Vite area, which means this episode we will start off with the American activation. The Americans are generally satisfied. I can't really say they're happy with the current situation, but they're satisfied with their position along most of the front here, especially in the north. Now, it's true that a big chunk of 2nd Infantry Division has managed to get itself cut off again by the German drive from the south, thanks to 12th Volksgrenadier. But they do have a prepared defense for 2nd, as well as 1st and 30th Infantry Divisions. As we continue out to the west here, 82nd Airborne did manage to get into a prepared defense in the Parker's Crossroads area. Even though they are being pressed by 116th Panzer Divisions, the Americans feel confident that 82nd is in no danger of getting blown away. However, the one area of concern they do have is just to the east of 82nd here. It's basically where 7th Armored Division is. Between the west flank of 30th Infantry Division here along the, I think that's the Salm River, and 82nd, the only thing they have is basically the remnants of 7th Armored Division. And there's a German Panzer Division chasing 7th Armored. The Americans would like to be able to basically fill this gap in with preferably a nice strong infantry division that is in a prepared defense. And so for that reason, the Americans are going to try to bring down the 84th Infantry Division from its positions up here in the north. This is most of the rest of the division arriving. They had one regiment arrive yesterday. They're going to see how far to the southeast that can get deployed and hopefully tie in here between 82nd and 30th, thus allowing 7th Armored Division to basically withdraw through the lines to a rear area here in reserve where they can maybe start to lick their wounds and rebuild. So we're going to start off today's episode with the 84th Infantry Division. All right, activating 84th Infantry Division. This is going to be one of those activations I mentioned where there probably won't be any combat involved, but the Americans wanted to activate 84th now because it's where and how far this formation is able to get deployed to the southeast is going to determine what they're able to do with 7th Armored, which is in the front lines currently. So we're not going to enter into a prepared defense because they are not where they need to be. So we need to get them moving, which is going to bring us right to our snafu roll. The trains are, I believe they are up here. Yes, they are up here at the entry hex. We do have a complete MSR. So the snafu mods, you can see they have a fatigue of 0. They are not mixed nor coordinated. They do have a -1 for game specific. And then their trains are at optimal distance for a +1. So that's going to net out to a +0. And they're not crossing the streams or using any tracks. So just a straight up +0. A 7 will give them a full activation, which is really what we're looking for here because we need to get them as far to the southeast as quickly as possible. And, well, at least it wasn't a snake eye. So 3 is just enough to get us a partial activation. And as I said, that's going to be half movement. It's going to be 1 objective marker. But I'm not going to place the objective marker because we won't be doing anything offensively oriented this activation. So I'm going to go ahead and just do the movement, and I'll show you just how far they get here at the end of the first activation and see if maybe perhaps they can get a second activation. Well, as you can see, the division did not get all that far. They had some leading elements along here. They sent the 334th Infantry Regiment off to the east with a battalion reaching just past Stoumont here. But everybody is still in move mode, which is not terribly helpful. And they're still a ways from, you can see the 7th Armored Division down here and 82nd there. So we'd really like to get a second activation to allow them to get a bit further down the road and into a position where we can actually pull 7th Armored completely out of the front lines. But I don't know if that's going to happen. Fortunately, we do not need to roll for fatigue because we did not place any objective markers. So we can go straight to the second activation roll. The headquarters here shows a 5 or 6. So going to need a good roll here in order to have a shot at a second activation. And kind of par for the course lately. The 3 obviously is not going to be enough. So a single partial activation for 84th Infantry Division here on the 20th. A bit disappointing progress made by them, particularly considering the good weather we have. The Germans, though, will take anything they get. They're happy to see that. And now we will we'll swing it back over to them and see where they want to activate next. The Germans are going to come back to the east here from where 84th is and do something that might seem a little strange at first, but they've activated sort of all of their formations that they wanted to activate before the Americans could really react or do anything. And so now the rest of these activations, there's not a huge priority over one versus the other, but we are going to activate 326th Volksgrenadier way in the north up there, and the reason for that is they'd like to get that division into a prepared defense. Now, the Americans are mostly on the defensive here in the north, but 9th Infantry Division, which has yet to activate this turn, is not, I think, in a prepared defense, and therefore is kind of in an offensive posture. And the 326th really doesn't want to get pushed back from where they currently are. So they're going to take advantage of this opportunity to at least get them into a prepared defense and see if they can hold the line there against any potential U.S. counterattacks. And then they'll let the 277th and the 3rd Panzer Grenadier here to the east be the active force that's going to put the squeeze on 2nd Infantry Division. So next up, 326th Volksgrenadier. All right, activating 326th. We'll flip them over. We have our combat trains on map here just to the north of the headquarters, so the MSR is complete. We are, in fact, going to enter into a prepared defense with them, and that is going to limit our options on the snafu to a partial at best. Let me dig out a prepared defense marker to place on the headquarters card. And then we're going to go ahead and roll the snafu. They have a fatigue level of 2, as you can see, which is going to be a -2. However, they have no coordination, and they're not mixed. Neither is there a game-specific DRM. Optimal distance for the trains is going to give them a +1. That's going to bring it back up to a -1. However, they are using tracks, but it is good trafficability, so that's only an additional -1. So a net -2 for the snafu here on 326 today. And the 7 -2 becomes a 5. That's going to be plenty for the partial that they're going to get. Now, they do have 2 organic artillery points, which is going to be halved to 1. And the question is, do we want to actually bother to place an objective marker somewhere? I don't think they're going to be making any attacks, especially with the -1 that the prepared defense would give them on any attacks. So if we do place an objective marker, it would be only for the purpose of doing a barrage attack. And with a single artillery point, that's the only amount of damage they could do. I don't think it's worth it, risking an increase in the fatigue level. So again, another activation without any combat. and it probably won't take very long, so I'll just do this real quick. We're going to flip over first to the 751st and have them fill in the line there. And we really only have 1, 2, 3, 4, these 5 battalions on map for the 326. The rest is just off map here. And I honestly think that that is going to do it for their activation. Again, the primary reason for the activation was just to go into the prepared defense to give them a little bit more staying power here against any potential push from the west from 9th Infantry Division. There's no fatigue roll required because we didn't place a marker. And now it comes down to whether or not we want to do a second activation. And I think we are reasonably satisfied with the location of our units at this point. Actually, you know, I was thinking of trying to shift him into this hex, but he's not with 2 movement points. He can't move ZOC to ZOC, so he'd have to come back here for 1, and it would cost another 2, which would be more than he can do in this particular activation. I would have to try to get a second activation to do it. That requires a 6. I think we're just going to leave him where he is. So that's going to do it for 326 today, and we'll go back to the Americans now. Well, the Americans, as we mentioned before, the Americans don't really have any pressing activations they need to do right now. So I think we're just going to keep it here in the north, and we will go ahead and activate the 9th Infantry Division and see what we can get from them today. All right, 9th Infantry Division is activated. Their trains are on map here at the entry hex. We have a complete MSR, and they are not in a prepared defense, and I don't think we are going to place them in a prepared defense quite yet. We would like to see them try to apply some pressure to the Germans up here in the north, because the rest of the American line here is in a prepared defense, just trying to hold on. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go straight to the snafu roll. They have a fatigue level of 1, so that's giving them -1. No coordination or mixed. Game specific gives them a -2. Trains are at optimal distance, raising it to a -1. However, they are using tracks, which is going to bring it back down to -2, and they are crossing the streams, as you can see here with 2nd Infantry Division. So it's a -3. Not a very good chance for a full activation, but stranger things have happened. So let's see. And they get an average roll here of 8. -3 is going to be good enough to get them a partial. And now the question is, what do we want to do with the partial? You can see they have 4 organic and no attached. So that's going to limit them to 2 artillery points. Ideally, they would like to push this 326th Battalion out of its position, which will then free up a safe path to the cutoff units here for 2nd Infantry Division. But to get down to reach this guy, we've got a 99th Infantry Battalion really inconveniently placed right here. We have another one here. If we move this way at all, we're going to be entering the blob of the 99th. That's going to coordinate both formations and is going to result in them being mixed. So that -3 that we were just looking at would turn into a -5 in a real hurry for 9th Infantry Division. So we either just go ahead and do it and accept the horrible snafu DRMs, or they try to push into the 326th line further north here, and then try and come at these guys from the north. Problem up there is the terrain is pretty awful, so they're attacking into terrain and across a minor river there, and they're attacking into west wall hexes, which means it's going to be very difficult to move those Germans out of there. But I think maybe we're going to see what we can do. Let's place the objective marker here. That's going to cover the battalion here in the south, as well as everyone except for the 751st way up here in the north. And I think really the only thing for it is to just start bashing our heads against the wall here. I think we will try to retake the village here of Höfen from the Ersatz battalion. They are only an action rating 1. And It's a small battalion, so the question becomes, do we try to use our 2 points as a destruction barrage and just blast them out of there, allowing us to walk in, or do we just spend 1 for a suppression barrage? Well, let's see what our modifier would be on the combat table with the suppression. If we have the, let's say, 1st of the 47th make the attack, supported or assisted by the 3rd of the 47th, we would have a 4. Red support makes it 5. 6, 7 for the artillery, 8 for the assist. The defenders are looking at a 1 for his action rating. He does have red support for 2. He's in terrain for 3. He's in a prepared defense for 4. And he has a hex side terrain for 5. So it's only a +3 on the combat table, which means we would need an 8 or better to take the hex, which honestly isn't that bad of odds, versus a 50-50 with 2 shots each on the ersatz. Let's go ahead and let's just make the attack here. We're going to spend 1 as a suppression. We're going to roll this +3 on the combat table. Hopefully we can get that 8 we're looking for. And indeed, we get a 9. +3 becomes a 12. That's going to be a D1 and an automatic retreat. So the attack succeeds. We're going to, he does have a safe path back to the HQ refuge, and he is 3 hexes from it, although he will flip to his move side. He'll have to go back to one of these 2 hexes, 1, 2, 3, right here. That attack actually killed the last remaining step in the ersatz battalion. So instead of retreating back here, it's actually going to the dead pile, and that will allow 1st of the 47th to get across the river and reoccupy the village. And I think we will bring 3rd of the 39th over for 1, and we'll pull this guy back across the small river there. Now the question is, do we want to try to launch an attack here under the objective marker hex, or maybe one up here on 2nd of the 753rd. We are across the river with 1st of the 39th, so we would not have to suffer the modifier for hex side terrain. Yeah, you know what? Let's do it. Why not? We're going to have 3rd of the 47th. Nope, can't do that because they are finished. That's why we're not attacking up there. However, these guys are not finished, so let's have 2nd of the 47th make the attack, assisted by 3rd of the 39th. We'll spend our remaining artillery point as a suppression barrage. So we've got 4. Red support is 5. 6, 7 for the artillery, 8 for the assist. The defenders are looking at a 2 for their action rating, 3 for support, 4 for terrain, 5 for the river, and they are in a prepared defense, which makes it a 6. So 8 minus 6 is a +2 on the combat table. We'll see how this works out. Not very well. That 4 actually becomes a 6, which is going to be an A1, no loss to the defenders, and that attack gets stuffed. So I think that's going to do it for the 9th in this activation. Let's go ahead and roll for fatigue. It's a 3 or less because of the attacks, and that 2 means that their fatigue level is going to increase up to a level of 2. And let's see if they can press their luck, maybe exploit their advance across the river there, and see if we can get a 2nd. We're going to need a 4 or better, and that's exactly what we get. So the 2nd activation, we're not going to go into prepared defense yet. We still want to keep applying pressure here to 326. So the snafu is going to be -2 for the fatigue level, -3 for the game specific, and then back to -2 for optimal distance, and then down to -3 for tracks, and -4 for crossing the stream. So it's a -4 to the snafu roll now. And that's 6 -4 is 2. That's actually a fail result. I don't think there's anything we really want to do with that, so we'll just plop them on there. And we did get 1 successful attack in on 326. We'll see how this continues to develop over the next couple days. Now we'll send it back to the Germans. For continuity purposes, we're just going to keep it here in the north, and the Germans are going to activate 277th Volksgrenadier just to the east here, and we'll see if they can continue to do some damage here to 2nd Infantry Division. They are not in a prepared defense. The trains are on map up the highway here with a complete MSR. So we'll go straight to the snafu roll. It's going to be 0 for the fatigue. There's no game specific. They're not mixed or coordinated. Trains are at optimal distance for a +1. They're not using tracks or crossing the stream. So we actually get a +1 here from the Germans. It's a little rare to see a positive snafu roll modifier this late in the campaign. And it's a good thing they had that +1. That 6 is going to give them a 7, and that's a full activation. It's going to be 2 objective markers. And they have 3 organic and no attached artillery, so they will get their full complement of 3 artillery points. And obviously, this grouping of American units is really what they're aiming at here. So I think to maximize the damage and reach of this activation, we'll go ahead and place both of our objective markers here, and that's going to come out and cover all of the cutoff groups as well as both of these American battalions here. Now I'll take a few minutes, look over the situation and see how 277th is going to approach this particular activation. We'll pick up in just a second. Well, the 277th has continued to push forward. They've come around the north edge of the American position here, kind of tied in with 326th. I think ultimately the idea will be to allow 326th to pull this battalion back up to the north here, where it looks like they're going to need some help against the Americans. And then 277th, again, is just sort of going to squeeze this pocket as hard as they can. Unfortunately for the Germans, it's a rather poor infantry division, but they'll see what they can do. We are going to launch 2 attacks. We're going to start, and it really doesn't matter which order we do these in because all of these units over here have no safe path. So we're going to have to get an automatic, well, even an automatic retreat will not force them to retreat. It'll just inflict an additional step loss. And that's fine. We've basically got them trapped, and we're just really interested in grinding them down and destroying them as quickly as we can. So the first attack we will make, let's make it here on 2nd of the 9th. We're going to have 1st of the 991st make the attack, assisted by 2nd of the 991st. And because German non-AV replacements are really not that much from turn to turn, even though they do increase as the game goes on, for the size of the German forces involved, the number of replacements they get is pretty paltry. So I like to try to sort of manage the strength of the infantry battalions in these Volksgrenadier divisions, because they simply are not very good, and you hate wasting or sending non-AV steps to rebuild these battalions with action ratings of 2, when you would much rather send them to rebuild the action rating 4 units that you find in the Panzer divisions for the Germans. So 991st Regiment, these 2 battalions actually has suffered no loss yet. So first we'll make the attack. We will spend 1 point in a suppression barrage. That's going to give us an action rating 2. We have red support for 3. Double objective zone is 4. 5-6 for the artillery, 7 for the assist. The defenders have an action rating of 4, and they do have support, which is going to make it 5. The division, 2nd Division, is in a prepared defense, which is 6, and they are in terrain for 7. So it's just a straight up +0 on the combat table. We're going to need to get at least a 7 to inflict some kind of loss on 2nd of the 9th. And they do not with the 5. The 5, however, will be just a single step loss for 1st of the 991st. Rather inauspicious combat debut for them. Moving on, we are going to attack 2nd of the 38th here, sort of at the nose of the pocket. And to do this, we will use the first of the 990th here, which also is at full strength, and it'll be assisted by first of the 989th, which is down basically to half strength. They've only got 3 of their 6 steps left, or 5 steps left. So we will spend another point, and this will be the same as the previous one. It's going to be a net 0. It's 7 minus 7. So here we go. See if we can roll a little better than a 5 this time. And they do roll a little better than a 5. They get an average 7, which is going to give them an A1 desituational. That's going to be converted because of the prepared defense and the lack of safe path into an exchange. So 1 step loss each for those units. I'll go ahead and mark those, and then we'll continue. Having marked the losses, the last thing we are going to do is we're going to spend our remaining artillery point in a destruction barrage outside of combat on 1st of the 9th tier, and that'll be spotted by 2nd of the 990th. They are in terrain and prepared defense, so that's going to be a 4, 5, or 6 to score a hit. And the 6 does indeed inflict a step loss on 1st of the 9th. 1st of the 9th, though, is in pretty good shape. That's only their 2nd step loss. So that's going to wrap it up for the initial activation here of 277. Let's go ahead and roll for fatigue. It's a 3 or less because of the attacks. The 5 actually allows them to avoid any fatigue accrual. And what the heck, let's see if we can get a second activation. We're going to need a 6. And the 2 is not going to do it. So 277th manages to inflict a mere 2 step losses on the 2nd Infantry Division forces here in exchange for taking 2 step losses. That's not a terribly productive activation, and the Germans would like to be able to get a better casualty ratio on the Americans, but considering it's an actuating 2 infantry division for the Germans, I guess that's about all we can really expect. So over to the Americans as we continue through the turn. The Americans are going to stay in the north, but we're going to move out to the west here, and we have Combat Command B of the 3rd Armored Division. I think we're going to send them southwards and see if maybe they can head down towards 106 Infantry Division and either do some damage on the west flank of 12th SS, or maybe run into Führerbegleiter there and see if they can maybe even cut their way through to 106th Infantry Division and give them some relief. So let's move out to the west here, see what CCB, which is a good formation, action rating 4, but very small with only 3 battalions. Activating CCB of the 3rd, the headquarters is up here at Spa, and the entire formation is right in here. You see we've got 3 dual task forces in the Combat Command. Their objective is all the way down here in the lower right corner, 106th Infantry Division and CCB of the 9th, which is just east of them. We're looking at perhaps driving down through Stavlo, coming across the track here out towards the 526th Armored Infantry Battalion, maybe crossing the Recht River there and either hitting the leading elements of 12th SS, or maybe trying to come down here and engage these 2 Führerbegleiter battalions and maybe, just maybe, getting out here and cutting open a path in here, but we'll see. First thing we have to do is pass a snafu check in order to do that. The trains for the division are on map. They are at optimal distance up to the north on the map edge in an entry hex. So we have a fatigue of 1, as you can see. That's going to be a -1. Another -1 from the game specific makes it -2. We're at optimal distance, which brings it back to -1. We're not crossing any streams. Neither are we using tracks. So it's just a -1 here. Obviously, a full activation would be nice, but you know, a partial is something we could deal with, and that's a good thing because that's exactly what we get. 5 becomes a 4. That is a partial. It's going to be 1 objective marker, half of our artillery, which is 1 rounded down to 0. And with half movement, I don't think we're really even going to be able to reach any of the Germans at this point to engage them. So I'm not going to bother placing an objective marker. We're just going to go ahead and move the formation down. And we'll go 1, 2, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5. 6.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3, 4.5, 5.5. 6, yeah. All right, so we will do that. We will now have to redeploy the headquarters further south. Where do we want to put him? I think he's going to have to end up here in Stavlo, since that's the closest actual road, and then he's going to end up on tracks eventually. So, yeah, that's fine. Let's 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're going to then have to redeploy the trains. And rather than come back north here, that's going to cross the, well, we don't have to worry about crossing the streams because it is a combat command, which is really nice for the Americans. So we'll just go ahead and bring them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll park them basically right here on top of 30th Infantry Division. And that's going to wrap up the first activation for CCB of 3rd Armored. There's no fatigue roll required, so let's see if we can get a second. That's going to require a 4, 5, or 6. And we do indeed get that 6. So things looking up for the Americans here. Snafu is going to be a little bit different this time. We still have the -1 for the fatigue and -2 for the game specific. We're at optimal distance, which brings us back to -1, but the trains are now ghosted, which is going to drop us down to a -2. So chances of getting that full activation are a little less than before, but still doable with a 9 or better. And came close, but not quite. So 7 minus 2 is 5. That's another partial activation. And now we're going to have to think about whether or not we're going to be able to get out and get into some contact with the Germans. We're on our move side, but you can see our armor value is only a 2. If we flip over, you can see we're going to get a 3 out of that, but it's going to drop our movement to 5, which is actually halved to a 2.5. So there's no way. That's only going to put us basically here along this track. If we stay on our move side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we can certainly reach the Germans. The question is, do we want to reach the Germans? Because we'd have, for engagement purposes, we'd have a total of 6. The Germans down here are looking at an 8. The who is that? Fear Begleit. Did they have any support for the infantry? And where did they go? They've disappeared on me. They do have a 3 support. So yeah, so we're looking at an 8 here or a 7. Either way, we're at a disadvantage against both of these units. We would actually have to do at least one stopping engagement if we enter the AV ZOC of the armor battalion there, because it's a real unit. Likewise, if we head over here and engage Bremer, it's not so bad. He's got an actual rating of 5, but he's only got a 1 for his AV, so it's a 6. It would be a kind of a stand-up fight there, if you will. So you know what? Of course, we don't have to place an objective marker in order to do any engagements. We would like to maybe, we're going to be more effective on our move side here, making an infantry attack, which these dual units are capable of doing. So I think, you know what, the question is, do we want to come down here, or do we want to head this way? And I think we've got a fair chance of maybe doing some damage here on Bremer, although we would be attacking across a stream there. Do we want to come down this way? You know what, let's go ahead and place the objective marker there. We will get no artillery because of the partial, and we only have 1, which is half rounded down. So let's just get right to it. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4.5. I'll have to stop and do a stopping engagement. As we said, it's going to be a 6 versus 6. That's no modifier on the target is real AV. So we're going to need, we're going to need a 9 to actually drive Bremer off, but I don't know if we want to do that. Ooh, close. All right, an 8. That is a both step loss, and I'm going to consider that a success as far as the Americans are concerned. If they can, anytime they can do an exchange when it comes to AV step losses, that's going to be a win. Not only because the American AV units tend to be bigger, but we will get more. We have more of them, and we will get more AV step replacements as the campaign drags on. So looking at 12th SS, Bremer, ooh, that's going to bring him down to a single step remaining. And that'll be the first step loss, obviously, for our CCB of the 3rd Armored. And that is Task Force Jordan. Where is he? I'm going to mark the loss there. And Love and McGregor are actually the bigger formations, but that's all right. Now the question is, do I make a second engagement in an attempt to hopefully destroy Bremer, which will bring him to a stop, unfortunately, or do we have done our one required stop engagement? We can simply accept the stop and then follow up with a conventional infantry attack on Bremer. And I think let's go ahead and do the engagement. I like the odds a little bit better. Let's do another shot. It's +0. You don't get that very much against German AV, particularly when the Americans are on their move side. So a 6 or better is going to inflict some kind of step loss on Bremer, which will kill him. Let's see what happens here. Oh, wow. Well, I didn't think it was going to happen, but then when I saw that 1 pop up. But we ended up with a 6. That's going to be +0. It's both loss, and that will kill Bremer, which is not going to make the Germans happy, and it will give Jordan his 2nd step loss, but we'll consider that a job well done. Anytime we are killing German AV steps, it is a good thing. That will, however, bring Jordan to a stop here. And we'll follow up with Love and Jordan, or Love and McGregor. Now I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's put him here. And I don't think I quite want to. I don't think I really want to engage him at a -2, because that's a little bit too big of a disadvantage. So we'll just stop right here. Perhaps we can activate before Führerbegleit next turn and get into our deployed side, which will give us a little better chances against them. And then finally, McGregor is going to follow up. 2, 3, 4, 5. Shoot, hold on. You're not thinking. All right. We're going to send Love this way instead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5. Now we will go ahead and take on the Jagdpanzer battalion here. Again, we're going to be at actually we'll be at like a -3. Is that a smart thing to do? Because that's going to require us almost no chance of driving him off. So maybe we will go ahead and just, how about occupying the village here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. We'll bring McGregor up. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He will have to make one required stopping engagement because of the German Panzer unit here. This is going to be a little painful because we've got a 4 plus 4 is 8. The Americans have a 2 plus 4 is 6. So we're looking at a -2 on the engagement table. And really at this point, I'm just hoping to be able to get an exchange out of this engagement. So an 8 or better is what we're looking for in the dice. Wow. Not only do we get our 8, we actually get an 11. It's going to be -2, which is a 9. That is a target loss and retreat. So not only did they avoid any step losses while inflicting one on 12th SS here, but they actually drove those Panthers off. And there are not many of those steps in the game here. So these guys will flip to their move side. They're going to go back 3 hexes. 1, 2, 3. We'll set him there. And unfortunately, McGregor can't get any further because he is out of movement points. We'd love to continue following up and continue to put some pressure here, but a rather nasty surprise it would appear for 12th SS here out to the west as CCB makes a very nice debut on the battlefield. We are, however, going to have to continue to move the headquarters forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll get them on the track here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is still at optimal distance. We will go ahead and take the trains out of ghost mode. And I think that's going to wrap it up for a small but productive activation for the Americans. Fatigue is a, actually it's just a 2 because those were engagements, not actual combat table attacks. And a 6 means they avoid any fatigue increase, which is good. Now, that is going to do it for CCB of the 3rd Armored, but I think the Americans have to be happy with what they were able to accomplish with this small but pretty good unit today, taking a chunk out of 12th SS. They actually managed to inflict 3 AV step losses from that formation alone from some very good units. So now we'll continue on with the Germans. I think we are going to stay in the north, and what we'll do actually is I'm going to probably concentrate on just wrapping up all of the formations in the northern half of the battlefield, since again there's not a lot of time urgent activations here. The Germans currently have 3rd Panzer Grenadier, 18th Volksgrenadier, 2nd SS Panzer, and 1st SS Panzer left to go in the north. The Americans have CCB of the 9th Armored and 106th, which are both cut off, 7th Armored Division, and the remainder of 3rd Armored Division far out to the west. I will probably go ahead and just do several of the non-combat activations off camera, and then we'll come back and I will just kind of show you who moved where. And I think really 1st SS Panzer is obviously going to be doing some attacking against 1st Infantry Division in the Sauerbrot area, but other than that we may not have a lot of combat. So let me go ahead and see what I can get done here, and then we'll pick up at a point where something of interest is happening again. Well, you know, I say that, and then when I went ahead and looked at all of the formations, I decided to go ahead and do 1st SS next. So this will be the formation that activates immediately after CCB of the 3rd Armored did, and this will allow me then to do all of the remaining northern formations, which will be non-combat involved activations at once. And I'll wrap up this episode by just showing you where those other formations have moved. So, activating 1st SS here, we are not going to go into prepared defense. We have our trains on map here to the east with a complete MSR. So let's roll the, let's figure the snafu roll. It's 0 for the fatigue. They are they mixed? No, they're all pretty contained right here. They're not mixed. They're not marked with coordination. They have no game specific. Optimal distance gives them a +1. Are they crossing the streams, however? Let's see, I think, all right, so 12th SS is coming down this road, so they're not crossing there, and it looks like 18th is here, so it looks like no crossing of the streams, which is good. They're not using any track, so actually +1 for 1st SS. So again, another German formation that's in pretty good shape on this snafu table. Let's see if they can get a 6 or better on the dice to get that full activation that they desire. And an 8 is going to do that. So full activation, that's 2 objective markers. They have 3 organic artillery points, and they have 3 attached. So that's going to give them a rather sizable 6 total. Now, obviously, you see the formation is kind of located right here, and they are concentrating against 1st Infantry here. They're trying to cut this road and push these guys away from 2nd and 9th over here. So I think it looks like the obvious location for the objective markers, both of them, are going to be right here in the little village of Sauerbrot. So let me take a look at this and see how we're going to go about shattering the American defensive line, and we'll continue in just a moment. I had a bit of technical difficulties trying to film the balance of the 1st SS activation, so I'll just give you a quick recap here. They shuffled some fresh battalions into the front lines here. They pulled back the battered Pioneer Battalion into a bit of a reserve position, and they also moved 1st of the 1st out of Camp Delsenborn in preparation for handing that location over to 12th Volksgrenadier next turn. They then launched an attack on the southern end of the American line. They dropped a 3-point destruction barrage on 3rd of the 18th, and they managed to inflict 2 step losses there. And then in the ensuing attack, they achieved an exchange, which resulted in a 3rd step loss for 3rd of the 18th and 1 step loss for 1st of the 2nd. They then fired 2 single-point destruction barrages outside of combat on the northern half of the line. They scored 1 step loss here on 3rd of the 16th, but they missed the 99th Infantry boys up here in the swamps. So not a terribly productive day for 1st SS. You can see they just continue to grind away here at the eastern flank of 1st Infantry Division, which is really not what the Germans want or need to do at this point. They really want to take Sauerbrot here and cut this secondary line, secondary road, and then perhaps even continue to drive over and grab this primary road, getting in behind 1st SS or 1st Infantry Division, as you can see over here, disrupting their MSR and causing the Americans to fall back. The Americans, for their part, though, are, at least for the time being, quite content to turn this into a slogging, attritional slugfest, coming to grips with the Germans and just pinning them down and grinding away at each other is, in the long run, really going to come out in favor of the Americans, simply because of the balance of forces that will be changing over the next week, week and a half in the campaign. So from 1st SS, we'll go back to the next American activation, and I've only got a total of 7 formations left to activate in the northern half of the battlefield, and it looks like all of those formations will merely be marching into new positions. I don't anticipate any actual enemy contact or combat occurring. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll run through all of those activations and pick back up here in just a second to give you a little recap of where they move to and what the situation looks like at that point, and then we'll probably wrap up this episode, and that'll leave us one more episode which will focus on the southern half of the battlefield, and then that will bring us to the end of the 20th of December. So back in a few minutes to update you on how things will wind up here in the north. Well, I've finished up all of the activations on the northern half of the battlefield, and I'll just show you where things stand at the end of the 20th of December up there. We'll start with the Americans, and you can see here out west, 3rd Armored Division has moved down at the very western tip of the German penetration here and taken over the area just to the west of 82nd Airborne. And 7th Armored Division is kind of slowly pulling back. They've actually moved their headquarters back quite a ways here, and you can see the rest of the division is trying to fall back. It's basically in 2 groups. You've got half of the division spread out along the road here to try to slow any advance of Panzer Lehr as they drive up, and the other half of the division is off here to the east, filling in the gap and covering the tracks here between this secondary road and Kampfgruppe Piper over here on the Somme River. The remaining 2 U.S. formations were CCB of the 9th and 106th Infantry Division, both of which failed their snafu rolls, and as a result, the battalion here, which is cut off from 106th headquarters, did suffer a couple of isolation losses and probably isn't going to be on map too much longer. Now, on the German side, things were pretty much a disaster across the board. We'll start here with 9th SS Panzer Division. This is one of the 2 Panzer Divisions of 2nd SS Panzer Corps, which are the sudden death formations, which need to exit the map in this area up here or further west. It managed to get all of 2 partial activations, and as a result of going for a second activation, it did lose its fresh status. So they're now at fatigue level 0, and the 2 partials, basically just the equivalent of a single full activation. You can see the formation is now, it has managed to finally cross the Our River, but it is still well east of where it should be. Its partner, 2nd SS Panzer Division here, managed all of 1 partial activation. And as you can see, the formation hasn't even reached Saint-Vite yet. So both of these divisions are way behind schedule. At this point, they should have been way out here up on the Salm River, but as you can see, they're still well to the east, and this does not bode well for German prospects moving forward. The 18th Volksgrenadier Division that you can see here, they just decided to fail their snafu roll outright. In fact, the only German formation that managed to get a full activation was the 3rd Panzer Grenadier Division. As you can see here, they moved down from up north here and have tucked in right behind 2nd SS along the road there. They will, being a mobile formation, I think the plan is for them to try to throw their weight into the drive out here, maybe reinvigorate this push to the west. So, as you can see, things are not really moving at all for the Germans here in the north, and each turn that goes by we are getting closer to the massive U.S. reinforcement that's coming in the next couple of days. So the Germans have about one more turn, maybe two, before the U.S. avalanche begins. And I think we're going to end this episode on that note, and that'll leave us one more episode, I think, to finish up the 20th of December, and that will focus primarily on the south here, where the Germans really have a number of formations, mostly 7th Army formations, yet to activate. We'll see what they can do in the south. Perhaps their fortunes will turn out to be a little better down there than they have been in the north. So that's going to do it for today. Appreciate you guys watching. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.